Hello, everyone, kids, parents, and teachers. On behalf of Paraclete Press, I want to welcome you to this story time and talk with Rabbi Sandy Sasso and Joni Rothenberg. Together, they have given us a wonderful book for children and adults called Butterflies Under Our Hats. This story is just what we need right now, and we're so excited about this presentation. What we'll do today, just to give you the overview, is Rabbi Sandy will say a few words about how the story came about. We'll hear a bit from Joni as the artist, and then Rabbi Sandy will read the story to us. At the end, we'll have a few words for the grown-ups about what the story means for today. There will be a time for questions, so please feel free to write any questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Also, a recording of the presentation today will be available later to share with anyone who couldn't join us. And we'll let you know, of course, how to get a copy of their wonderful book, Butterflies Under Our Hats. Just a brief introduction. Sandy Eisenberg Sasso is the best-selling author of In God's Name, God's Paintbrush, Creation's First Light, and other books. She is a rabbi and director of the Religion, Spirituality, and Arts Initiative at Butler University in Indianapolis. Joni Rothenberg is an Indianapolis-based fine artist and board-certified art therapist, and the illustrator of several widely acclaimed children's books, including The Lightning Bug Queen, Creation's First Light, and of course, Butterflies Under Our Hats. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Rabbi Sandy and Joni. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. I am really looking forward to this session, and I'm delighted to be together with a good friend of mine, an artist, Joni Rothenberg. She'll say a few words after this introduction, and after I read the book, she will say something about her art and her illustrations. So just one correction now, I am Director of Religion, Spirituality, and the Arts at Indiana University, Purdue University for the last 2 years. I'm really excited to be there. So I wanted to tell you where the book Butterflies Under Our Hats came from. I actually was reading a series of legends and stories, and I came across this story of butterflies that I had never heard before. And it comes from a tradition of legends called the Helm Legends. Now, Helm is actually a real town in Poland, but it also has sort of an imaginative history. And the legend goes that when God wanted to spread souls around the world, he gave each angel a bag of souls. So some had foolish souls, and some had wise souls, and some had funny souls, and some had serious souls. And God told each angel, spread those souls all around. So every town will have some foolish people and wise people, and they will all get along together. Well, it so happened that the angel who was carrying the bag of foolish souls bumped into a mountain, and all the foolish souls fell into one town, and that was the town of Helm. And so you will see the story has sort of a funny, foolish side to it. So just to give you an example of what a Helm story is, let me share with you this. Which is more important, the sun or the moon? A citizen of Helm asked the rabbi. That's such a silly question, snapped the other person. The moon, of course. It shines at night when we really need it. But who needs the sun when it's already broad daylight? So they're all kind of funny stories, and that's what the story of Helm is, but it also has a very important message. And now Joni Rothenberg would like to say a word or two before we listen to the story.
Hi, my name is Joni Rothenberg. I am the lucky illustrator of this children's book, and just behind me is one of the illustrations that you'll soon see, and that was created in the studio. So it's kind of fun to be on Zoom and to share the studio space with you. Looking forward to hearing the book and answering any questions, and also offering an art project at the end.
Well, thank you. So we are going to begin butterflies under our hats. So once there was a town called Helm where there was no luck. I'm going to stop for a minute. I think there are going to be illustrations up. Isn't that correct? Hopefully. Oh, here they come. Butterflies under our hats. Once there was a town called Helm where there was no luck. If something could go wrong, it did. The roofs of the houses always leaked. The sidewalks were cracked. The gardens grew only weeds. Nothing was ever right. Some people said, luck comes and goes. But in Helm's case, it never came. It only went. Others said, there is no such thing as luck. The people of Helm were certain that luck was real, and somewhere they had lost it. They looked everywhere, in beds and in basements, in pant pockets and in pickle barrels, in water wells and wicker baskets. But as luck would have it, they never found any. We never have any luck, they sighed. And so they gave up. They stopped building homes, delayed repairing sidewalks, and quit planting gardens. Then one day, a strange and beautiful woman came to town. No one had ever seen her before. She wore a large purple felt hat over her red hair and a long green dress that matched her eyes. She told the people of Helm that there was something better than luck. Better than luck. The people weren't sure they believed her, but they listened anyway. Having lost their luck, what else do they have to lose? Tomorrow, at daybreak, the strange woman with the purple hat and green eyes informed the town, butterflies of hope are going to fly into the town square. If you can manage to cover the butterflies with your hats, you will have hope. And hope is better than luck. Some of the townspeople thought the woman was crazy. Nothing was better than luck. But others weren't so sure. The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, the people of Helm, who couldn't find any luck, went into the town square to look for hope. Just as the red-haired, green-eyed woman had said, clouds of colorful butterflies appeared. They landed on the ground. For a few moments, they just sat there. Their wings fluttered softly. The people were very quiet. They gently placed their hats over the butterflies. There were silk top hats and woolen hats and black berets and bonnets with bows. There were felt fedoras and high hats with pink polka dots. There were fancy fur hats and silly straw hats with feathers, all covering the town square. We have it, they all exclaimed. Now we have hope. But just as they said those words, it began to rain. The drizzle became a downpour, and suddenly the people needed their hats. One by one, they took their silk top hats and woolen caps, their black berets and bonnets with bows, their felt fedoras and high hats with pink polka dots, their fancy fur hats, and their silly straw ones with feathers. One by one, the butterflies disappeared. They watched as the last person lifted his hat, and the very last butterfly flapped its wings and rose into the sky. Now, not only don't we have any luck, the people sighed, we have lost hope as well. At that very moment, the red-haired, green-eyed woman appeared once again. Her large brim purple felt hat collected the raindrops and kept her hair dry. Look under your hats, she whispered. People were puzzled. They had seen the butterflies vanish into the clouds. They were certain that there was nothing under their hats, nothing under their black berets and bonnets with bows. The butterflies were gone, and with them, their last hope. As quickly as the rains had come, they stopped. The people lifted their hats, their fancy fur hats and silly straw ones with feathers, and looked inside, just as they had thought. There were no butterflies. Look, they showed the mysterious woman. Nothing, nothing. There is nothing under our hats. Look again, she whispered, and then disappeared. The people looked under their hats, under their felt fedoras and high hats with polka dots, and they could hardly believe it. The butterflies had gone, but they had left a trace of something, a fine, faint powder. They saw it, the trace of the vanished butterflies. And that was all they needed. Hope. The people of Helm started building houses, repairing sidewalks, and planting gardens. Sometimes their roofs still leaked and their sidewalks still cracked, but not always. Their gardens grew weeds, but also flowers. The people of Helm no longer looked for luck. They found something much better, and it was there all along, right under their hats. And that is the story of butterflies under our hats. Well, I'm going to tell you something about what I first found when I read this story in a collection of stories, and how I changed it when I wrote this book. But before I do that, I would like the illustrator, Joni Rothenberg, to tell us something about her illustrations and share with us a special art project that we can all do. Joni?
Hello again. Sandy, thank you for reading the book. It's been a while since I've heard it out loud, and I really enjoyed it. So when I was painting all these pictures, I brought one. I can stand it up. This is one of the many paintings that was in the book, and it's on a canvas. So substrate is like a piece of fabric, and I use acrylic paints with that. Sometimes we don't understand exactly how the paintings get into a book, but wanted to share one with you. I thought of, what does hope look like? How do you find it? Why is it so magical? And how do we know that it belongs within us all the time? So it was a really fun way to imagine a difficult concept. But I have a art project for all of you that I think is really quite simple and very impactful that all of you can do. It doesn't matter what age you are, and you could spread the love and by sharing your hope with other people, it's somewhat contagious, just like it was in the book. So I started drawing on rocks, and I thought, you know, when Sandy was reading a story, I quickly made a butterfly rock, and I'm going to place this rock in an unexpected place. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to take a walk outside, and I might put it in someone's driveway, or I might put it on a walking path. And on the back of the rock, this is backwards, but because of the camera, but I wrote the word hope. But this is a chance for you to think of what the power of words and what you can write on the rock and how you can spread that optimism and know that this time is gonna pass, but you are making a connection with another person. So you simply find a rock outside. There's many rocks. If you have any kind of water, I found it by the creek, but you can find rocks on any kind of walk or possibly in your backyard. And I used acrylic paint. I painted the surface black first, and then I used markers that are paint pens, but acrylic paints also work with small brushes or even magic markers. So check around the art supplies that you have in your house and use this project as a family project and ways to have fun together, and then to take a nice walk and connect with spring and place this in an unexpected place.
Thank you, Joni. It sounds like a great idea. I think I've got to go look for some rocks right now, because it's kind of like what happened to the people of Helm. They didn't expect to see anything under their hats after the butterflies flew away, but there it was. So it was a surprise. So I want to say something about this story and how it evolved. So I found this story, as I said, in a collection of Russian folk tales. Actually, the Helm stories began as a series of German tales that the Jewish community thought were so great that they adapted and wrote as Jewish stories. So they changed them somewhat. So I felt it was okay for me to change it. And what did I change? Well, first of all, the person who had come to tell them about the butterflies was not a woman with a big purple hat. It was a stargazer. But I didn't know what a stargazer looked like. So I decided to make a woman who was flamboyant. Secondly, they talked about butterflies and hats, but they didn't describe what kind of hats there were. And I just thought it would be so much fun to imagine all kinds of hats, you know, fedoras and tall top hats and feathered hats. And that just seemed to add something to the story. And then the most important thing I changed was the ending. When I first read the story, I was all excited. I was going along. I said, wow, this is so much fun. And then I came to the end, and it ended with the butterflies flying away and the people saying, now not only don't we have any luck, we don't have hope either. And that was the end of the story. And that was so, made me so unhappy. I said, I can't leave the story like that. I think I have to retell it. And I went looking online to find out whether butterflies leave a trace of their presence. And lo and behold, they do. They leave a little powdered trace. And I said, I need that. I need that little trace of hope in order to go through hard situations. And when I did find this story, I was going through a very hard time. My daughter was going to have very serious surgery, and I needed the trace of the butterfly. Fortunately, she was well and did well. And the story came to mean for me, how do you hold on to hope when you think it's gone? And how do you continue to build? So I do have a few things to say about how I used this story in the sermon. And actually, interestingly enough, it began as a sermon. I wrote it about 2 years before it actually became a book. And I included it in a sermon because I wanted to explore how we get over feeling like we've been beaten down and we can't go on. What do we do? How do we get on with it when we can't get over it? When the situation is so serious? When everything we relied upon is shattered? When faith in a benevolent universe is broken? How do we find the ability to still laugh and wrestle joy out of despair? Where do we find hope? And I'm feeling that this story is particularly meaningful at this time, when it feels like everything we trusted in and everything we thought we could take for granted, everything that was certain in our lives is just not there anymore. And what do? How do we find that little bit of hope to continue to build like the people of Helm did? I mean, they went on building Haslows, and they went on fixing sidewalks, and they went on planting gardens. It wasn't perfect. There were still weeds and there were still cracks, but because they had hope, they could continue. And I think it's important that we recognize there is a difference between wishing for something to be so and hoping for something. Wishing leaves the work up to someone else. It's passive. It asks nothing of us. But hoping demands that we make a commitment to do whatever it is we hope. And I think that is what the people of Helm did in the very end. They made a commitment. They started building houses again and planting gardens. And that was hope. So I do see there are a couple of questions. Jenny, can we go to those?
Yes, we actually have a comment from someone. He said, we loved the story and the illustrations. And if you like Joni's idea, have a look at the Kindness Rocks Project for more inspiration.
Oh,
thekindnessrocksproject.com. Love from the UK.
Wonderful, thank you. Were there other questions?
I don't see any other questions right now, unless anyone has anything to add. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Oh, well, I had more to say then. I was just thinking it looked like they looked like there were 4 questions, so I just stopped. So I did this sermon in relationship to the story of Abraham and Isaac, because I imagined being Isaac having to get up off that mountain after he had been tied down. And I wondered what it took for him to be able to walk down that mountain alone and go on with life, you know, to create a family, to continue life after his traumatic experience. And I thought what he had found was hope. And that was when I told the story of butterflies under our hats, that we need to be kinder to ourselves, kinder to others, to forgive ourselves, forgive others, and to find somebody who will listen to us and to find that little bit of hope. So after I gave that sermon, a few days later, I was in my office and I had a congregant come up to my office and say, I really need to give you a gift. I said, well, why? He says, I listened to that story and I'm thinking that maybe you're going through a hard time. And so I want to give you a special gift, and I'm going to show you that gift right now. It's a little pot of flowers and it plays music. I have to say that has been about 16 years ago that I got these flowers, maybe. And I still have them. And every once in a while, I put in new batteries and I play the music. And I remember about the trace of the long lost butterflies that are still there and hold on to hope.
Thank you so much, Sandy. We do have a few questions here.
Okay.
One is from Mamie Ryef. How many books have you written? Do you have any books in the works? We enjoyed the story and the beauty of the illustrations.
Great. Well, yes, I've written about 20 children's books. Probably beginning, my first book was published, I believe, in 1994. And I had a few recent books come out. I have two that will be published this spring and summer. One called, oh gosh, I can't believe I pick up the title. Okay. One called Judy Led the Way, and another one that was just very positively reviewed by Kirkus Books called A Very Big Problem. And I think if you like butterflies, you'll like A Very Big Problem. And I'm playing around with working on a few other ideas. I love, love, love writing children's stories. And I do have a website, www.allaboutand.com, all about and you can see all my books there. And I'm also on Amazon, so a little self-promotion, you can come and look at any of them. Parakeet Press also published a book of mine for adults called Retelling the Bible as well.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions from Lexa. Rabbi Sandy, talking about the people needing to start building again in order to make their hope constructive, reminds me of the saying, God can only steer a moving ship. Reminds me that if we do our part, we give something for God to work with, and God does more for us than we could have imagined.
Yeah, that's a wonderful sentiment. And that's when I was writing this, I felt very strongly that the people had to do something. Something couldn't be done for them until they showed some effort to do something. And once they just believed in themselves enough, then they could move forward.
From Sally, thank you. Hope is so important. What inspires you to maintain hope?
Oh dear. Well, these days it's been a challenge for certain, but I think it is just other people. I mean, every time I read a story about someone who has gone out of their way to help someone in need, who a doctor or a nurse has been in the hospital spending extra hours, people working in the grocery store, being particularly careful and kind to customers to make sure they stay healthy, you know, people contributing to food banks, baking for other people, putting little rocks around just to make people smile. I mean, those are the things that give me hope in humanity, in our ability to somehow reach out, even in hard times, to make life a little better for someone else. So I think it's in talking to people, in hearing their stories, and also in being out safely in nature that gives me reason to hope.
Another question from Betty, what age is most appropriate for butterflies?
Oh, well, so actually, I mean, I think it's a really good book for, 5 to 8 years old, but I also think it's for any ages. I mean, I told this story for a sermon with there were only adults present. So I think there are a lot of children's books that are not for children only, that they really can contain messages for all of us. kids just love butterflies, and the illustrations are so wonderful that I think, very young children would just love looking at all the pictures and looking for butterflies, especially, well, now where I live in Indianapolis, spring is coming.
And our final question, which is practical, is how do you overcome writer's block?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, I have had that. Well, I guess there are a couple of things. You have to tell yourself, as I have to tell myself, that there are stories out there. Just give yourself time, and also step away from the computer. Go take a walk. Go play with your kids or your grandkids or neighborhood kids. I mean, not now, but normally. Do something totally different, totally unlike writing. And then you might be surprised a story will come to you. And you know what? I think writer's block is just part of the process. Every time I finish a book, I go, okay, that's it. Not doing another. I have no more ideas. And I kind of think of that like giving birth. As soon as you give birth, you go, okay, that's the last time I'm doing that. But then again, we go back to it. So keep the faith, keep hoping, and stories come. They don't always come as fast as we would like them to, but they do come.
Rabbi Sandy, thank you so much. And thank you, Joni. We're just so grateful you were here with us today to bring some hope. And we want to thank all of you for joining us as well, everyone who attended. Just a quick word, as a publisher, we're so grateful for your support, especially now, and we hope that many of you will take time to purchase a copy of Butterflies Under Our Hats, which is available from paracletepress.com and also from Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and any other online bookseller. Your support enables us to continue to bring these kinds of good books to you, and we can't do it without you. So thank you so much. We hope you enjoyed the story and the talk as much as we did. Our prayers are with you for your health and continued safety. And we hope you'll join us for more of these webinars. Our whole schedule is at paracletepress.com. And again, thank you, Rabbi Sandy and Joni.
Thank you for having us.